Hey guys, what's going on? This is Fred2266 here, and as you can see per the title page, I know what you're thinking. You say,
But Fred, you're supposed to read 6 to 12 chapters of Fastest Fall in Equestria today.
yes, well, I decided out of the goodness of my heart, and because as I look at this story, it's pretty short, 5 chapters, none of them over 4,000 words. Plus, it's made by a very good subscriber of mine, Lisa Aaron Wolf, and so just to thank her for being really loyal and stuff, sending me the Swedish fish and stuff, and answering the multitude of questions she did for my Q&A and stuff. I figured the least I could do is read her story. All of the chapters today. And if you're asking, what does that mean for Fastest Fall in Equestria? I could still do that. It might not be 6 to 12 chapters. It could be 3 to 5. Um, but it won't be 6 to 12. That's okay. I'm going to get this out of the way. Um, you know, I'm not really sure what to expect. But as the description says, while working on an experiment in her lab, there's an accident that results in Spike almost getting hurt. That night, she starts to have strange dreams about the experiment and what could have happened. Well, are they really just dreams? I don't know. It's suspenseful, and we're gonna find out. And chapter 1 is entitled "The Accident," revised. So she fixed all the chapters. I'm not sure why, but I guess she just felt that they need to be fixed. Day 1, morning. It was a new day, and Twilight Sparkle was just getting up. She was excited since today she was going to start a new experiment. She had gotten everything ready the night before. She trotted downstairs to the library and into the kitchen to have a quick breakfast. Simple grain toast and a cup of her favorite tea. Twilight! Spike yelled as he came running to the kitchen as Twilight was finishing her toast. He was out of breath, looking up at her apologetically. After catching his breath, he said, "I'm sorry I wasn't up to make breakfast." Twilight just smiled at her faithful assistant and shakes her head. "It's okay, Spike. I got up early and didn't want to wake you," she answered and used her magic to put the dishes away while asking, "Are you ready to get the day started?" "Always, Twilight. You know me. Always ready to start the day," he answered with a cheesy smile before his stomach rumbled and he blushed. "After some breakfast, of course," he said as he went to where he kept his stash of gems and got a couple. "Oh, Spike!" Twilight just smiled and rolled her eyes with a shake of her head, leaving the baby dragon to his gems before going back to the library's main hall. She wanted to do some work and get some studying done before starting the experiment. Being the librarian of the Golden Oaks Library in Ponyville, other ponies came in for books and advice from time to time. Spike came out of the kitchen sucking on a finger after having finished his breakfast. He noticed that Twilight was busy for work cataloging some books she had gotten, so he started to work on his own chores for the day. Mostly, he made sure the library was kept clean and Twilight had plenty of supplies. He was always ready. He was also always ready with quill and scroll if Twilight needed to make a list or take down some notes. Day 1, afternoon. The morning passed quickly, and soon it was afternoon. Rainbow Dash, Applejack, and Fluttershy stopped by to join her for lunch. Twilight always enjoyed spending time with her friends. Spike prepared them a nice lunch of a daisy and leafy green salad, sliced apple, and some fresh bread. Applejack had brought some fresh apple juice as well. During lunch, Rainbow Dash explained, in a rather animated fashion, a new trick that she had done, which resulted in knocking Applejack's hat off her head. "Oops! Sorry about that, AJ," Rainbow Dash said sheepishly as Applejack put her hat back on. Twilight and Fluttershy both smiled and giggled. Applejack, after a moment, started to laugh as well. "Ah, shucks, Rainbow, it's fine. Just be more careful, you hear?" Applejack replied, to which Rainbow Dash nodded in agreement and smiled. Soon after that, lunch was finished, and Twilight's friends left to continue their day. Fluttershy offered to help clean up, but Twilight politely declined. Twilight gave Spike a hand with cleaning up after lunch, wanting to get it done quick so they could start on the experiment. With the two of them, it didn't take too long to get everything put away and dishes cleaned and left to dry. Satisfied that everything was done, Twilight smiled. "All right, Spike, let's let's get to that experiment." "I'm rusty, aren't I? Yeah, I know," Twilight said as she looked over at Spike. Spike nodded in response and smiled. Twilight and Spike headed down the stairs to the basement till the lab was set up. She used her magic to light a few lanterns and went to work, Spike assisting her when needed. They'd done an experiment before, and he knew what to do. The experiment Twilight was working on was a way to find was to find a way to store books and crystals to make it easier to carry a bunch of them at one time. The experiment itself was going good, but they hadn't made any progress. Twilight brought out a new crystal to work with. The old one had burned out and wasn't usable anymore. It looked dull and gray. Even Spike refused to eat them after tasting one. Twilight was starting to get frustrated with the lack of progress. She sighed and brought a new crystal over from her supply and placed it on the pedestal. Where did she get all the crystals? Oh, she must have become a hoodie ninja and stolen from the Crystal Empire. Well, that's called thievery, Twilight, and, yeah, you can go to jail for this. But oh well. Who's stopping her? She's a princess. She started to focus her magic on the crystal and pulled the book into it. It seemed as if everything was working. The book started to merge with the crystal and be absorbed like it was supposed to. But then it started to pull away from the crystal. In a fit of frustration, she pushed a little more power into the spell than was needed, and the crystal exploded, and fragments flew all over the room. The book flew over and hit Spike in the side of the head. Ugh. Spike! Spike! Are you okay? Twilight yelled and rushed over to check on him. He laid still for a moment. Twilight feared the worst. Spike! Please wake up! She cried, nudging him with her hoof, and Spike stirred, opening his eyes, and sat up, rubbing the side of his head. Twilight? What happened? Feels like I got hit by a manicore's tail, Spike said, looking up at her as he stood up, blinking. Good thing we dragons are made from tough stuff, he added with a cheeky grin. Twilight just smiled at the baby dragon and shakes her head with a sigh. There was an accident with the experiment and the crystal exploded. The book flew over and hit you in the head, she said with a sheepish look. Let's stop for now. I'm getting hungry, and it has to be dinner by now anyways, she said as she used her magic to put Spike on her back and made her way up the stairs, putting out the lanterns. That sounds great, Twilight. I could use something to eat, Spike said with another grin as he rode on Twilight's back up the stairs to the library. He had a bit of a headache from the hit to the head from the book, but that wasn't about to stop him from having something to eat. I could really go for some amethyst right about now, he said as Twilight used her magic to close the door. Day 1, evening. And we're 7 minutes in. After dinner, Twilight spent time studying her books to try to figure out why the experiment hadn't worked. Not coming out with an answer just made her more frustrated. Her mane was a mess and stray hairs stuck up in random spots. I just don't get why it didn't work, she groaned as she paced around trying to figure out why her spell didn't work. I'm using the right crystals, she said with a stomp of her hoof. You're thinking too much about it, Twilight, Spike said as he watched her pace around the main lobby of the library. She gave him a flustered look and shrank back a bit. I'm just saying, and he shrank back a bit. I'm just saying, maybe you should sleep on it, he added while he fidgeted with his tail nervously. He had seen her like this before, and it never looked anything good. Yeah. Lesson 0. Oh, poppin' beach volleyballs. Oh, crazy. Twilight sighed softly with a shake of her head. Maybe you're right, Spike, she said as she looked out the window, seeing how late it had gotten. Maybe after a good night's sleep I'll think more clearly. She started to head upstairs to her room, and sat at the window to look out of the town. It was a nice night, clear. The weather team had done a good job again. Spike followed Twilight to the room and went to his bed. He looked over at Twilight as she sat at the window. He shook his head as he got under the covers and got comfortable. Good night, Twilight, he said. He hoped she would take the hint that he wanted to get some sleep. Good night, Spike, Twilight said in return. She did get the hint, and she used her magic to turn out the lights. But she didn't go to bed right away. She sat at the window longer to look out at the clear sky and the stars twinkle. She loved nights like this. It put her at ease, but didn't help her solve her problems had. She went over to her bed and got in under the covers. She closed her eyes. She thought of the day, and as she started to doze off, her mind went over the experiment she had run. Something still nagged at her in the back of her mind, but she couldn't put her hoof on what it was. And now it's italicized, so I guess we're in dream sequence. As the book stopped merging with the crystal, she pushed way too much power into it, and the crystal started to hum and pulse violently. Twilight's eyes went wide as she backed up. Bolts of energy came off the crystal, and one struck the box of crystals nearby she had for the experiment. The crystals flew over and started to orbit the pulsing one in the center of the room. It's going to make a Crystaltron, the newest transformer. All the crystals started to pulse and hum as they drew in magic from the room. Spike stood on the other side of the room, wide-eyed at Twilight. Twilight! Do something! He called her over the sound of the crystals. The hum was getting louder by the minute. I don't know what to do! Twilight called back to him, her eyes wide as the crystal started to pulse faster. She tried to teleport over to Spike, but got thrown back against the wall by the field of magic in the lab. Spike was trapped in a small alcove, unable to get over to her or to the stairs to escape by the quickly spinning crystal. Damn it! Ugh! Twilight! Spike yelled over to her as she hit the wall. She tried to get over to her, but a crystal hit him hard and threw him to the back alcove. He had been stuck. The crystal left a nasty gash across her chest, and the impact left had knocked him out. Twilight had gotten up just in time to see him get knocked out. Her eyes went big, seeing the blood. Spike! No! She gritted her teeth, and her horn started to glow brightly. She started to sweat under the strain as she worked her magic into a strong magical burst. The result was not what Twilight had expected. The crystals drew in the energy and started to shake and hum violently. She didn't have a choice now. She fired a magic burst past the crystals and buried Spike under part of the tree in dirt and put up the strongest force field she could. As the crystals exploded violently, shards flew all over the lab and buried deep into the walls. The blast also blew the wall out of the basement lab and knocked over the lanterns, catching the walls on fire. Luckily, the force field held up under the blast from the crystal. She felt drop and rushed over to where she covered Spike and used her magic to quickly uncover him and put him on her back. Hang on, Spike. I'm going to get you some help. I promise, Twilight said, and teleported out in front of the library. She ran as fast as she could to Ponyville General Care. In her panic, she didn't even care about the fire that had broken out in the library. What a great mommy. Twilight sat up in a cold sweat looking around, her mane matted to her face. She saw Spike still sound asleep in his bed. She got out of her own and went over to check on him. But he was fine, as he said. Dragons are made of tougher stuff. She sighed softly and smiled in relief that he was okay. She trotted down the stairs to the kitchen and made herself some tea. She wasn't sure after a dream like that she'd be able to get back to sleep. She closed her eyes as she took a sip of the tea. The scent of burnt wood in her nose made her frown. Why did I dream something like that? She asked herself as she took another drink of tea, sighing. This is going to be a long night, she said softly to herself as she felt a few tears roll down her cheek. That was chapter 1. I'm going to be taking a gamble and reading chapter 2 in this same part. I'll probably be doing that for all the parts. And no, I don't feel like it. Oh, if I put all the multiple chapters in one video, that equals less videos, and I don't like that. The more videos, the better. So this has been chapter 1, and chapter 2 will be right up next. So stay tuned.